and welcome you all to the second day of our webinar series. The theme of today's webinar is Yoga and Respiratory Health and Immunity. Our eminent panelists, Dr. K.K. Deepak, Dr. Kavita Gulati, Dr. Nagaratna, who will disseminate the role of yoga interventions in the management of respiratory conditions like asthma, COPD, and allergies, and also highlight the challenges in implementing yoga modules and about the directions of the future research. The moderator of this day is Dr. Apar Saoji. He has completed his bachelor's degree in naturopathy and yogic sciences from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Bengaluru, and he has done his doctoral work on the psychophysiology of yogic breath retention from SVYasa University, Bengaluru. His areas of research interests include application of yoga and naturopathy in health and disease and understanding the underlying mechanisms involved. He has over 15 publications and visited several countries like Germany, France, etc. for propagating yoga and naturopathy. He has also been a guide to PhD students of SVYasa and AIIMS Rishikesh. He is also a recipient of 3 gold medalists and awarded Sitaram Jindal Award and also Dr. D. Virendra Hegde Pattabhisheka Award. Currently, he is the principal of the School of Yoga and Naturopathic Medicine, SVYasa. I'll hand over to Dr. Apar Saoji and he will introduce our panelists and moderate the session, starting with the prayer. And please welcome Dr. Apar Saoji.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anasuya. And I would like to thank from the Yoga Fraternity, the Ministry of Ayush, CCRYN, under the leadership of our Dynamic Director, Dr. Raghavendra Rao, for organizing this series of webinars on different kinds of health issues and how yoga can play a role in each one of them. Before I introduce the panelists, I would request Dr. Nivedita from SVYasa to begin with a small prayer. Dr. Nivedita.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you. Vinayaka, 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 Vishwadhara, Vinayaka, 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 Siddhi Vinayaka, Bhava Bhayanasha, Suramuni Vandita, Shri Ganesha, Siddhi Vinayaka, Bhava Bhayanasha, Suramuni Vandita, Shri Ganesha, Vishwadhara, Vinayaka, 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 Gajanana, Gajanana. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nivedita. I welcome all the viewers who are watching us live on the Facebook handle of CCRYN. And this is essentially a Triveni Sangam that we are experiencing today. We have stalwarts from physiology to pharmacology to internal medicine, and all of them involved with yoga research extensively. And it is my honor and privilege to introduce our eminent panelists for today. I would begin with my own mentor, the mother of yoga therapy, we call her fondly, Dr. R. Nagaratna. She is a MD FRCP, a rheumatologist by qualification, but essentially a yoga consultant, and she has been at forefront of making yoga as a therapeutic modality, which is very, very applicable, useful to people at large. She has been recipient of many, many awards, and the list goes on. But Karnataka Rajyotsava Award and the latest award by the International Diabetes Federation for her work in Niyantrita Madhumeha Bharat, the nationwide mission that she was the principal investigator for, are some of them to mention. She has been a guide and mentor to multiple doctoral scholars and everybody at SVYasa and otherwise other places as well. Welcome, Dr. Nagaratna, whom we fondly
Namaste.
call as Nagaratna Didi.
Namaste to all of you. Welcome to this seminar.
We also have the head of the Department of Physiology from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Dr. K.K. Deepak, who has been an eminent figure across the world for his work in autonomic physiology, but that is not what he is limited to. He has been working extensively with yoga research. He has been working with astronomers. He is working with their physiology and whatnot. So many things. I'm very fortunate to welcome you, sir, for this particular session today. We also have Dr. Kavita Gulati, who is a pharmacologist originally, and she works as the director professor at the Vallabhbhai Patel Chest Institute at the University of Delhi. She has been working extensively again at the molecular level at the respiratory disorders. One of the key interests that she has is application of Ayush medicine in respiratory disorders. To mention specifically COPD and bronchial asthma, she is having, I mean, all three of them are having more than 150 publications to their credits, multiple PhD students whom they have guided, and they all have gone extensively across the world. They're all extremely well versed with their own fields, and it is really a privilege that all of them contribute to the science of yoga. It is my honor and privilege to welcome all three panelists for today. And before I jump into the very much spoken issue of respiratory health and immunity, which has become come to forefront because of COVID pandemic, I would just have a very quick question to all three of them. What, as a modern medicine specialist, all three of you have drawn you to yoga research, and what makes that inspiration to you? I would start with Nagratna Didi.
Friends, it was in 1970s. I was working in the United Kingdom in the Department of Rheumatology. I would work in the wards where are 20 people lying in the general ward with almost 18 to 20 joints replaced and taking large amount of immunosuppressants. It was as early as 1960s itself. We had clearly known that rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune disease, and autoimmunity has got a lot to do with the stress. So psychoneuroimmunology was already in the field. But what are we doing with the psyche? This is where the science of yoga has everything to do with mind management, and that is how I jumped into the psychosomatic system of practice or mind-body practice using yoga as a therapy, and I came back from UK.
Thank you, Didi. Deepak sir, we would like to hear from you. You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Thank you, Sauji, for this opportunity to share. So it was my second year MBBS when I was doing it at Bhopal. I myself wanted to go some yoga training because there was some teacher available. So I went there just out of curiosity. And when the first time the Shavasana was introduced, and I felt something like it was a truly new experience. I was trying to find out why it's happening. I was a student of physiology. Then and then only I had a deep interest in pursue yoga in medicine. So during the second year itself, that point of time I suggested, why don't we do head down tilt for a tubercular patient so that we get better circulation in the pipes. So that was the hypothesis I proposed that point of time, but it was 1976, 77. Nobody thought of that, doing tubercular patient doing head down tilt, but then it's okay. Then I had interest in physiology. I came to AIIMS, and at AIIMS pursuing a PhD after doing MD, because in PhD you could choose a topic. So I chose a topic, something which has not been done that point of time in literature with reference to yoga. So yoga and epilepsy was the topic which was untouched by anybody till then. even the famous Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who published volumes of the research that point of time. I went through all the volumes, I did not find. So the first time we went into this kind of a research, that yoga in epilepsy, trying to find out the mechanism as a physiologist. And then we were trying to find out the mechanism, will it work or not? But surprisingly it worked. And also there were some EEG changes. We could show the shift in the frequency to the normal alpha side. And that work was very well cited. So the yoga practice left to the shift of frequency from the lower, which is not abnormal in epilepsy 5 to 6, to the normal, near normal 8 to 9 hertz, which is normal alpha. So that's how we could clinch the first time we did FFT. That was in 1985 onward, 85 to 90. So that's how I got interested. And since then I've never went back. Thanks to Ayush, thanks to DST, they have given a lot of funds, and we've been doing a lot of research. And yesterday only one paper has been published in IGMR. Simon, thank you.
Congratulations on that paper, sir. Thank you. Dr. Kavita, we would like to hear from you as a pharmacologist. It's a 360-degree shift, because from drugs you're talking of an absolute non-drug modality. What is it that inspires you to take up yoga research, ma'am? Ma'am, you are muted. Sorry.
Yeah, at the onset, I'm very thankful to CCRYN, especially Professor Raghunder Rao, for giving me this platform to share some of my work on yoga among you stalwarts in this field. So I'm really very thankful. And actually in 1985, when I was student at AIIMS, the Professor Chinna used to take lectures on yoga. And he used to show us the videos in which he showed that by yoga, you can have the total control on your body. You can stop breathing at any temperature. You can sit for months together. You can delay the aging. So those impact were there. And I had a very longing for the yoga. Then I started attending the yoga classes. Then in 2000, I did myself on Saturday and Sunday. I could devote time and did from Bharati Yoga Sansthan. I did the teacher training course in yoga and cleared that. So at that time, I was very much interested. Then I thought, why to take advantage of yoga just myself, but I should include it in my research also. So I started this protocol on the effect of yogic intervention on pulmonary function, cellular and molecular markers in bronchial asthma in around 2011-12. And then I got this project sanctioned by the Ayush Ministry of Ayush also. But then it was very difficult to convince my PhD students to take it as a topic of their PhD. They said that we won't be landing anywhere after this. I told them, no, it's going to the solution of all the problems. And you will be learning all the clinical pharmacology techniques, how to do the clinical trials you will be learning, and you will come to know that it is the best of the thing you have done in your life. So I was able to convince. Then we were doing the projects and the PhD thesis and doctorates in this work. So this topic is very close to my heart. Although you rightly said that it's just a 360 degree, it's just opposite to the pharma. But when you have studied the pharma, you know that what are the side effects of these drugs. So we actually say that if a person is healthy, it's okay. If somebody is ill, he has to be doubly strong. First, to fight with the disease. Second, to fight with the adverse effects of the drugs. So he has to be even stronger to face that disease as well as some of the drugs, because these are xenobiotics, which has to be excluded from the body. So you rightly said that, but this topic is very close to my heart, and I have full faith in yoga.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insights on why you chose yoga research. It appears that, all three of you have started your yoga journey even before I was born. So I am fortunate to be sitting and moderating this session. But when it comes to physiology, I think breathing is the only system that is under both autonomic and voluntary control. And that is probably what is exploited in yoga extensively. We have pranayama, which is a very, very important and significant part. So I would start with Professor K.K. Deepak, asking him how, this simple modulation of breathing, just maybe changing the nostrils or slowing down or pacing your breath, how does that bring in so dramatic changes in overall physiology, especially with reference to immunity? And what is the connection of respiration and immunity? I think you are the best person to talk about it, sir. And I have an ancillary question to that, which as a student I always had. Anatomically, my left and right nostril doesn't have any difference. And beyond this nasal passage, it's all the same. So how exactly does right nostril breathing and left nostril breathing change so many things? We do have enough amount of evidence to understand that there is so much of autonomic shifts that happen. And who better than you, who is an expert of autonomic physiology, to answer that question, sir? Please.
So thank you for this heavily loaded question to be answered in 5 minutes. So anyway, I'll try to justify how best we can. So to begin with, the simple question, out of the three components, if you take namely, how come pranayama is slow breathing, asanas and meditation, do they have a differential effect, and what is the effect of pranayama alone on physiology and especially on immune function? So that's the first part of the question if I take it around. So I try to zoom in. Yeah, so what I found, I was trying to see into the component of the breathing. So when we started breathing, that it has almost all manipulative component which can be done possibly with the breathing. So I appreciate the way 5,000 years ago people might have thought that logically that whatever can be done, manipulation can be done breathing, they did it. So that was a beautiful point, like all sorts of fast, slow, right, left, giving different pauses and different. Now, if you look at in physiology, respiration is the only volition function which I can control on one hand. So it's volitional, I can change. So it is automatic act. It's an automatic act because it's automatically also be done if I'm not aware of it. If I'm unconscious, also it works. On other hand, it's beautifully connected to the manipulation of the heart rate, normally happening respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and also changes in blood pressure, which we have actually documented and shown a previous work recently published. So the respiration is a maneuver by which you can change, or it automatically changes your blood pressure and heart rate in terms of oscillations. It's beautifully connected. If you see more connections, then when you take breath in and out, the activity in the brain, especially the frontal area and other area, also starts changing. So respiration is a physiological stimulus which actually sets a new tone, new oscillations entirely in all systems. Even in a finger pulse, you might find some changes. So this is how it is a powerful stimulus which a yogi have harnessed, that if you modify this voluntary control, you can manipulate your systems, the control system, namely autonomic nervous system, and through which autonomic, this is how. So I'm not going to details of how autonomic will come, but coming to the point, the respiration, the deep breathing, especially slow respiration, is a stimulus for enhancing parasympathetic function and changing your relaxation, which means enhancing relaxation and changing your attention behavior. You become more attentive non-analytically. That's why the beginning of any meditation or other thing, you start meditating on your breath, focusing on the breath. The moment you start doing, which is an act of automatic, you automatically become relaxed. So that's the beginning of any meditation. That's how I thought. So the respiration is a big modifier for the attention function. And when you modify attention to non-analytical, instead of doing calculation part, you become relaxed. So once you are relaxed, it has a tendency to improve your immune function. Any sympatholysis, if you do, it will improve your immune function. Similarly, enhancement of the vagal function also increases your decreases sympathetic function and enhances immune function. So there's a relationship between sympathetic nervous system and immune function. We all know that is very well laid down equation from a stress hypothesis. When you are under stress, too much of stress, too much of anxiety, your immune function go haywire. Now, how do we prove it? So earlier this has been proven at AIIMS research and several other research. Sudarshan Kriya was used by Dr. Vinod Kochipille in 2002-2006 and paper was published in 2005. They showed that in the patient, those who are having a cancer or pre-cancer state, when they do the fast breathing and also the normal pranayama breathing, they have shown the natural killer cell level goes up. And this study has been already published that natural killer cells, they go up. Similar thing have been shown in HIV and by CD4 count, and the CD4 count goes up and CD4 8 point goes, it becomes normal. So CD4, CD8 ratio becomes normal. They also. So what is another mechanism? Fast breathing. So when you look at the respiration can modify through attention regulation, which I told you. Second thing comes as a diaphragm. The diaphragm is a very important structure in breathing, which comes into the force whenever you're doing the resistive breathing. So inspiratory resistive breathing or any resistive breathing, your diaphragm starts oscillating. This has got a special muscles. When you put diaphragm under stress, this itself becomes an organ which actually causes. So diaphragmatic breathing is very important. If you regulate it, it has got a connection with immune function. So diaphragm itself will become a stimulus to cause the immune regulation. So that is one second level of mechanism. The third level of mechanism would be in terms of the slow breathing and fast breathing. What are they causing? And so I consider them as a separate different. In 2002, we proposed a hypothesis and we are still going on and proving it, that if you do a fast breathing, repeated breathing, it gives you the episodes of sympathetic stimuli every time. So there's a respiratory oscillations of fast breathing, the sympathetic oscillation, and if you keep on practicing it, then there's a sympathetic blunting which occurs because of the practice. The same way the way you do exercise physiology. In exercise physiology, every day we raise sympathetic stimulus to go at the higher levels, more than 60 or 70% of HRV, 60% of heart rate max. When you actually becomes you start sweating, there's the oscillation of sympathetic. Same thing happens when you do. So the mechanism of slow breathing and fast breathing are different. Therefore, by doing a fast breathing also results in a long-term sympathetic blunting. And this is a hypothesis we published, and we have shown that acutely if you try to do Kapalbhati or some other, you increase your blood pressure. You increase in terms of oscillation. However, this results in a blunting, and therefore blunting of sympathetic nervous system oscillation gives you a better long-term tolerance of any sympathetic stimuli, which comes later. So this is another mechanism. Now, the last one which I'm talking about, the slow breathing. This is what recently we worked with Dr. Ansuya, worked in a PhD, and how slow breathing is motivating my autonomic nervous system, mobilizing my autonomic nervous system. Now, is slow breathing causing changes in my heart rate or my blood pressure, and which comes first? So this is important. What we have shown that those who practice slow breathing, they get their baroflex sensitivity set at a better level. Therefore, any stimuli coming at blood pressure stimuli coming to them at later date, they get a better response. Therefore, they become more responsive to any autonomic stimuli like fall in blood pressure. So there are different mechanisms. Therefore, this will also be operating on immune mechanism level, because if you don't get too much of sympathetic stimuli later, therefore you become more resilient. So I have covered what mechanism: attention regulation through the diaphragm, through the fast breathing, and through slow breathing. These appears to be the mechanism. Now, since time is limited, others have to speak, so I will not go into much details of a right and nostril breathing. As we know, they are connected to the different part of the brain, right and left hemisphere. So if you stimulate the right side of the body, then it stimulates my left side of the brain. then lights are so this is what the brain connection, and it gets reflected into light and nostril breathing, which are unique, which have a different cyclicity, which has been very well known and discovered. So I would like to end to give opportunity to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that insightful mechanism-based learning on how yoga breathing would work. The next question is, I think I would ask to Dr. Kavita. It's the pharmacology is all about biological markers. So other than what happens in the brain, but there are I'm sure that yoga practices in general, yoga breathing in specific, would elicit not just the autonomic changes but also cellular changes. So how as a pharmacologist you see, say, biological or cellular markers getting modified with the practice of yoga, maybe in health, maybe in illnesses like asthma or COPD? Madam Kavita, please. Ma'am, you're on mute, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I will start with my experience with the respiratory diseases.
Yes.
So in respiratory diseases, I have worked on asthma, COPD. So we see that what is the difference from the normal healthy individuals. So we know that because asthma is a chronic inflammatory disease with hyperresponsiveness of the airways and which are reversible initially, but in later stage, the acute inflammatory changes are converted into the chronic inflammatory changes and structural remodeling starts, then it is difficult for the patient to recover. So why these changes start happening? That is the inflammation. So you know that asthma occurs when somebody is exposed to allergens or bacterial or viral infections. So all this starts. So initially the immune response starts and it tries to take over that xenobiotic or the bacteria. But when there is overstimulation of the response, it changes into the inflammation. And when the inflammation is there is infiltration of eosinophils, neutrophils, mast cells. All these cells are accumulated in the airways, and then they are the basic key cells of the primary cells of the inflammation. So they release so many of the cytokines, chemicals, neurotransmitters, which further increase the infiltration by the inflammatory cells, and this whole process starts. So at that time in the bronchial alveolar lavage, if you take and you measure the cytokines are increased, you know that in COVID patients, they're saying that IL-6 is increased. So it is also IL-6 at low level, it is good. It is an indicator of good immune response. But later on, as it goes above some range, above the optimal level, it becomes toxic to the body. It is targeted towards our own cells and produces the damage to all the tissues. And that time the oxidative stress starts taking place. That is the imbalance between the pro-oxidants and the antioxidants. Because normally the free radicals are generated in our body during the respiration, during the electron chain reaction, when the ATP is generated. So these free radicals are taken up by and are scavenged by the antioxidant enzymes and the antioxidant mechanisms we have. But when there is overproduction of these free radicals, these can be the reactive oxygen species or reactive nitrogen species. So the body is not able to handle them. So oxidative stress results, which causes damage for oxidation of the lipid membranes, DNA molecules, cells, and all the damages start. So in bronchial asthma as well as the COPD patients, we had studied all these markers of oxidative stress like MDA, SOD, GSH. Then they are very specific markers of inflammation like the Clara cell secretory protein 60, which is helpful. This secretory protein helps in the lining, maintaining the lining of the epithelium. But when its function, there is dysfunction of the Clara cells, there is reduction in the levels of the CC16 proteins. Similarly, osteoprotogenin is another marker which is increased in the COPD patients, and it is very specific to the COPD patients. So these levels are gone up, and we have seen that when the yogic intervention was given daily for 50 minutes for 3 months, there was remarkable reduction in these inflammatory markers and the immune markers. because you know that asthma is a type of inflammation in which the immune reaction changes from Th1 to Th2 kind of cells. That is, there is reduction in the Th1 cytotoxic cells and increase in the Th2, like the IL-4 cytokines, which are responsible for generating the antibodies and which are acting against our own cells, and they are targeting those cells. So it maintained the balance. The yoga intervention maintained the balance between the pro-oxidant and antioxidant. So it we got the again the homeostasis between the pro-oxidant antioxidants plus reduction in the inflammatory mediators. So all these resulted in the correction of the process, and pulmonary functions were better. There were improvement in that, and the net of all these is the quality of life. So there are special quality of life questionnaires which are specific for bronchial asthma patients, from COPD patients. So we have applied those questionnaires and found that the quality of life was much better in the group which were given the yogic intervention. And we also found the probable mechanisms. Those patients had more resilience against the responses to the environmental stimuli, and they were emotionally more strong, more confident that they can do it. So these were the factors, like the Dr. Deepak was also discussing about the psychosocial impact of the yoga. So these are the things, because it is a subtler than the physical body. So the psychosocial state is the subtler. So it can regulate the physical things also, that the pulmonary muscles. So there was strengthening of the pulmonary muscles by the yogic kiryas, and there was strengthening of the psychological state of the patient, which improved and the quality of life and their responses to the environmental stimuli, like dust, pollens, and all these factors. So I think it covers your question, or some.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think one key point that I would like to take up from what you said is that everything in the body has to be in a balance. And that is the central theme of yoga as well. The very definition of yoga says samatvam yoga uchyate. There has to be equilibrium. So I would like to now go ahead and ask Dr. Nagaratna, Didi, how do you see all these physiological, biochemical, molecular changes that occur because of yoga? How do we connect it with the yoga, traditional yoga understanding, the philosophy? And the other question that I have for you is, say the yogic traditional texts never talked of yoga as therapy. So how we take the philosophical aspect of yoga and apply it in therapy, what aspects must be considered while we do so? Dr. Nagaratna, please. Didi, you will have to unmute. There will be a microphone symbol.
At the top of the window, ma'am.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Yes.
Namaste.
Didi.
Namaste to all of you. To begin with, let me quickly take 2-3 minutes to make ourselves understand the concept of body as described by yogis, so that we can take it to understand the connection between the whole system. They said that we are all made of not only the physical body that we are seeing, but we have 4 other bodies. The physical body, they called it as Annamaya Kosha, which is the chemical part of the body, which has their oxygen, nitrogen, potassium molecules, which go to constitute the physical body, which we can see and then understand. But this is the dead part of the body, we can say. What makes it live is the prana. The prana is the life energy that enlivens every cell. So in our language, anatomy is Annamaya Kosha, that which makes the physiology possible, functions possible, movement possible, activity possible is the life energy or the prana energy, and behind that is the mind body, which is our thinking apparatus, which they divided into two parts, the manomaya kosha or the lower mind, which has a function of perceiving, responding, whatever information comes through our senses is immediately received by the mind, and immediate there is a response in the form of a emotion or even an analysis. So immediate response. This is the part of the thinking apparatus, which they call as the lower mind or the manomaya kosha, which is always controlled by our higher thinking apparatus or deeper thinking apparatus, which is the seat of our right knowledge, which is the seat of our right understanding, which always guides and controls our lower mind. Even now while we are talking, there are two parts of our brain, thinking apparatus. One is receiving, but other one is already doing lot of inner analysis. How do I connect with this knowledge? How do I connect with that knowledge? How do I connect with my old memories, etc., etc. So the Vijnanamaya Kosha, or the deeper mind or the subtler mind, is the component which has got three functions: the I, the observer, and observer, doer, and the knower, and the right knowledge and memory. Behind this is our basic conscious mind, which is the quiet, blissful, non-functional layer, which is very well experienced in deep sleep. In deep sleep, my body I have forgotten, my prana I have forgotten, my mind I have forgotten, but I am still there as a deeply rested, quiet state. That is the Anandamaya Kosha. How do we connect it with the disease? How do we connect it with our physiology? Is that whenever there is, we beautifully heard Dr. Deepak saying what are all the nervous neurochemical activities, and Madam explained the actual inflammatory activity that is happening in the lung tissue. So for any function to happen, we need prana. When there is too much of inflammation, we need too much of prana. So for the inflammation to happen, there is lot of prana activity which is necessary. Therefore, whenever somebody gets a respiratory problem, for example in COVID, when there is lot of inflammation that is happening, the prana is drawn from all other parts of the body to do this function here. So person feels very weak, tired, exhausted, loss of appetite, etc. He can't even think. In fact, I had a COVID. My mind was blocked for almost 3 weeks. I could not do my intellectual activity at all. So the whole system was drawn to do this inflammation, and that is the whole way system has this automated mechanism to carry on its functions to do the healing. As Dr. Deepak beautifully brought out and Madam brought out, when the mind is overactive, when the mind gets into anxiety, fear, tension, which we are seeing intensely, what happens is the whole system gets disturbed. Mind becomes active, and therefore the whole of the concept of psychoneuroimmunology is very well thought of. Mind stress, which is an emotional response to demanding situation. There is violent activity in the mind, too much of uncontrolled, repetitive rewinding of sentences in the mind, uncontrolled, lost volition over that. That draws in lot more prana activity, which overwhelms the system, creates a big imbalance. So the whole of the understanding is to bring about voluntary mastery over this uncontrolled, speeded up mind, which is causing uncontrolled, speeded up prana activity, uncontrolled, speeded up, locked up prana activity, which is causing uncontrolled inflammation in an allergic disease or an autoimmune disease or a degenerative disease. And in the case of acute infection like COVID, we have uncontrolled excessive cytokine storm, which is killing people. So this extra imbalanced, uncontrolled, involuntarily excessive pranic activity is all controlled by the mind. Therefore, the sages said, if you want to really know what is prana, if you want to really bring about a balance with all these violent things, the only thing that you can do is use your volition, use your mind, because that is the only fluid thing where the knowledge mind or the Vijnana mind can control the monkey mind or the lower mind, which pulls me into anxiety, fear, tension, worry, depression. Therefore, the whole of the summary of managing the mind is to slow down the rate of flow of sentences in the mind, which Sage Vasishta called as Mana Prashamana Upaya. Consciously reduce the speed of the mind. And to do this, they suggested many techniques, and slow breathing, alternate breathing, fast breathing followed by slow breathing is the one which helps us to develop this volition and mastery. And therefore, slow breathing is a very important tool which beautifully Dr. Deepak brought out. Voluntary mastery over involuntary functions of the body is a summary of the entire management of yoga. You use a body movement, you use a breathing movement, or you use a meditative technique, or you use even a devotion. When you use a devotion and surrender to the divine energy, you have slowed down the whole mechanism. Mind switches off, let go happens, all the emotions get relieved, and they say that even in karma yoga, where you work with an attitude of yogasthaha kuru karmani, get established in this non-reactive state while you are at work, all these and the knowledge base of what is happiness, how the mind gets agitated when you are in the Indriya Sukha, and how you can de-identify yourself are all the techniques. Therefore, they classified all the techniques under Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, working at the body level, breathing level, mind level, emotions level, intellectual level, all to take us to that state of blissful, quiet, deeply balanced samatva state, all balanced state. And this is what our physiology is showing. So the whole summary is reduce the violence inside. Become totally so silent inside that system will take over and do its function. Now coming to the question of how we apply these concepts in therapeutic situation. The sages designed all these techniques for moving from normal health to higher states of perfect health and divine health. And they went on seeing better and better and better and better volition, better mastery, better higher tuning to higher laws of nature, higher laws of system, getting to know every minute details of the physiology, etc. But the techniques were so well designed that the imbalances that were created by sickness can be corrected by using the same technique. So to give a simple example, we had a person who had asthma. He was a master of, he's actually a sannyasi, very much into genuine sadhana. He would go into very deep meditation, but his asthma was not going. His asthma was still troublesome. And he came here, and when I talked to him, he says he gets into deep meditation where the mind gets into very calm state. for 2 hours, 3 hours every day. There is an institution where everyone in the institution should sit and meditate from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. only. Their activity starts later. But his asthma was not going. So we have this theory that silencing the mind cures all the disease. But he is silencing the mind. He is keeping the mind quiet, even giving very deep rest to the nervous system. Then why is his asthma not going? Then we discussed and he could understand that an imbalance was created. He learned how to de-identify himself from that imbalance, get off into that silence. So what therapy he learned was, he should get into the body. When he does a breathing, when he does a stretch, when he does a chanting, he gets into the lung area where the actual pranic activity is locked up, where excessive inflammation is going on. So he experiences that through mindfulness and recognizes that imbalance, and there corrects the imbalance by doing a movement, breathing, chanting, and from there goes into meditation. Instead of keeping the imbalances as it is and switching off, he could recognize the imbalance at the physical level, at the breathing level, using a breath awareness, and from there he was able to get into his meditation. So within 6 weeks of stay here, he could say that my meditation has become better now, my asthma is gone, because now whatever imbalances were there due to excessive prana activity there, which was locked up, an imbalance, I could recognize that and work on that. This is the therapeutic application of the same mechanism that the sages use to go to higher levels of consciousness.
Thank you, Didi, for that wonderful connect. Science has started talking of psychosomatic ailments only very recently, but it's the sages who have already told us about Adija Vyadi years ago. So, the science of yoga definitely tells us a lot more is to be found in the actual science today. With that, I think I will ask a question to all the panelists here to share their experiences with, say, the respiratory system or immune system. What work you people have been doing, and what are the kind of benefits that you see of doing yoga? I would start with Professor Deepak, sir. Sir, you're mute. Sir, you're muted. Sorry.
So thank you, Saoji, for the question. So the question is describing our work on yoga with reference to the respiration.
Yes, sir.
As I told you, way back early 90s, one of the WHO fellow from Bangladesh, Dr. Aisha Khanum, joined us for 1 year, and she was a WHO fellow, and she was here for just 1 year. And there was a challenge that what to do in 1 year's time. So that time Dr. Usha Sachdeva was there, so I was assistant professor. Yeah, probably, yeah. So I approached her. I've got WHO fellow and what to do, and I'm interested in yoga, but how we can do. So that was all probably second project which we took, and then talking to Dr. Randeep Guleria, who is now director. That time he was in the respiratory medicine department doing respiratory medicine. So we thought that why don't we use yoga? I was doing autonomic then, pure yoga, autonomic and bronchial asthma. Just take a few cases as a pilot and try to see is there a connect. So look at this, WHO fellow from Bangladesh comes here and we get a very little funding for doing some autonomic things also. And that time this study was carried out and we showed categorically, yes, in bronchial asthma and with the patient's improvement parameters, we showed changes in autonomic profile in terms of sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. So that becomes a very good study which was published, and I must say out of so many studies that study was very well cited. We never thought that just 1 year, just a small project, but that time, and that too is with Dr. Randeep Guleria and Dr. Usha Sachdeva at that point of time, we thought. So this was the first study we took, and very successful story. We were very happy to publish that work is available. So this is Aisha Khanam who carried out this study. Now, after this, when pursuing meditation research and other things, one of the fellow, Dr. Ramprabhu Vempati, he joined us. He joined us, me and Dr. Bijlani, and again we wanted to continue the bronchial asthma. We took up a very heavy protocol. It was a CTRI, a clinical trial, registered, properly registered, and we wanted to see if they do give yoga protocols or well-defined protocols, how my bronchial parameters, also exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, and other parameters in terms of inflammatory markers, how do they behave? So it was a formal, proper randomized controlled trial which was carried out right over here with the help of CCRYN, and then we came out that if you give yoga protocols and we followed proper statistics, so exercise-induced bronchoconstriction was reduced after giving yoga protocol. So that's what I was saying, that exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, which is occurring, which is a kind of episodic, it reduces. And there were some other findings which have been come out. So again, very powerful study was published, and again we get so much of citation. In fact, I was invited by Harvard Medical School to give a talk on this topic way back in 2009. So that was a second study. Then we carried out several other studies on Sudarshan Kriya, Shambhavi Mudra, Isha Yoga, and several other procedures. And then lately we have carried out 2 more studies with the help of ICMR. Now going into the fundamental mechanism. So you raised a very good question. We talk about the physiology and yoga. How do we and why we apply to pathology or as a yoga therapy? So what as a physiologist, I see the disease and health as a continuum. It's only we are healthy to certain level, fit to some level. The ill people are not fit to that level. So it's all a continuum. Some have a minus health, some have a positive health. So in fact, we all are aging. We all having some kind of issues of cognitive decline in memory or some controls coming. So we all have fitness level. So the yoga is a tool by which you can shift the fitness level to on a higher side, whether in a disease or whether in a healthy situation. So if a healthy person performs, he becomes better fit in terms of memory or working neurons, in terms of respiratory, in terms of physical fitness, in terms of ability to tolerate autonomic insult, like fall in blood pressure. This can happen at all ages. Like even an 80 years old person, when he performs yoga, he'll be more fit. Okay, even a patient of a diabetic who's got a lot of diabetes with glycated hemoglobin going to 7 or 8, 9, 10, and he performs all these things, he becomes more fit. So it's all kind of, we are helping converting all illness behavior or lower fitness to the higher fitness, and it's all a continuum. We can say we all are good and healthy people, some are lower, some are higher, or we all are sick, some are lower, some are higher, depending on what definition you call it. Therefore, we focus now recent research on fundamentals, how slow breathing changes my autonomic profile, my sensitivity of the system, how does it change system controls. And we also use different types of pranayama, all types, 6 types, and try to see how they are telling me and behaving in an acute phase. The moment I start doing it, one thing. If I do it for 6 months and 1 year, that's a different story. You become an established yogi. But what happens to a normal person when you give? What happens to a yogi when you give? So you compare the acute response. This has been a recent focus. Recently, we published 4 or 5 papers right on this issue. And this was in mind, can we apply this yogic breathing protocol to the astronauts, to the microgravity? Can we make their system more robust, so that they can tolerate the nuances of gravitational forces or stress and other things? So this is what I see. So thank you very much for this question. I would like to end here. Thank you.
Amazing, sir. Thank you so much. Dr. Kavita, your comments on the current research that you are involved with. Madam, you will have to unmute.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Dr. Sauce. Yes, actually, I had mentioned some of the very specific, novel, and selective markers of these respiratory diseases, which we have worked on. I'll just, because of the shortage of time, I'll just give one very interesting finding that
Yeah.
because in the institutional ethical committee gives the permission for parallel design randomized controlled trial only when you are giving the conventional drug treatment as well. So you
Hmm.
cannot go ahead only with yoga group. So
Correct.
that is one of the thing in which you can't see just the effect of the yoga. So we found that how it is altering the therapeutic effects of the conventional treatment, that is the bronchodilators and the corticosteroids. So we came across very good finding that the effects which were being observed in the group which were given just the conventional treatment, they were not significant. Their magnitude was not that much to achieve the level of significance. But the group which was given the yoga intervention for 50 minutes daily, in that clear cut, after 15 days, the effects started appearing. And the clear cut, the balancing as evident from the levels of pro-oxidant, antioxidants, all the biochemical measures and the cellular molecular markers of inflammation, they started decreasing from the first month itself of the follow-up, whereas it was achieved after 2 or even in the third month of the treatment with the conventional treatment. So it was very interesting finding that it enhances the efficacy and the safety of the drugs also. The side effects felt among the patient was much less. And second thing, we give the SOS salbutamol also to these patients whenever there is exacerbation. So the requirement for SOS medicine was also drastically reduced in the group which was given the yoga intervention. So clear cut, two findings were there from the pharmacological point of view, that it improved the efficacy of the conventional treatment as well as the cost of the drugs, because they did not require now the SOS administration of the short-acting beta agonists. So it was a very wonderful finding and reduction in the side effects as well. So like we concluded in that study also that it enhances the efficacy of standard treatment in both the time wise as well as the impact wise, the magnitude of the effect also. So both ways the yoga affected the drug treatment, and second, reduce the demand of the further drug administration of SOS drugs. And overall, the best thing which we achieved is the quality of life. The quality of life was much better. They were able to do all the activities the person who were not able to do initially, going to the market, doing the household works, they were able to do it. And the social stigma that whenever they go, they will cough, they will disturb the everybody. So that had gone. They were more confident in doing all the things. They had confidence in themselves. So the quality of life improved a lot. So these were the very significant findings of both the studies, because in COPD, we have done the BORD index, which is very specific for the COPD patients. So it is comprised of four mainly factors, that is the BMI, pulmonary function test, 6-minute walking distance test. So they all improvements were much earlier, and the BORD index improvement was there, which predicts the exacerbation in the patients of COPD. So the yogic intervention in all the sense proved that it affected by maintaining the balance, homeostasis between the pro-oxidant and antioxidants and the inflammatory markers and the cellular markers of the immunity. So that was a wonderful achievement. Actually, I think that it has always, the yoga has a holistic approach. So these are just the byproducts. Good health is just the byproduct of yoga. It is not that to achieve this we do yoga, but automatically we'll get there, and the peacefulness, the contentment and the relaxation which we get by yoga is beyond description actually. So these good health and the improvement in all these factors is the byproduct of that. So I would like to say that much about it.
So nicely put, ma'am. I mean, you have side effects of the drugs, and good health is the side effect of yoga. And also, the findings that you are mentioning uh, emphasizes on the role of integrating, the pharmacological interventions, yoga making them better. So that
Yes.
is where integration is going to be the future. And I would like to
Yes.
hear from Nagratna Didi. Uh, they were the pioneers in yoga and asthma. First randomized controlled trial in the world was carried out by Dr. Nagratna and Dr. Nagendra. Didi, your work on yoga research with respiratory diseases.
As you said, Dr. Apar, the first publication was in 1985 in the British Medical Journal on a randomized control trial on yoga 53, yoga 53, non-yoga group, which was our first publication also. We had not published any paper before that. And it was almost, the paper was about 2000 words, but the reviewers' interaction was so interesting that they were learning yoga through this interaction. And I'm not exaggerating when I say the reviewer discussions went on to even 50 pages of discussion, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's how the paper got accepted in 1985. And the next one was non-randomized control presentation on some 500 or 856 patients or something, which was being presented by Dr. Shirley. And it was interesting that the people asked, I think you have mistaken some digits. Is it 3-digit number or a 2-digit number? Was the question that was asked by Dr. Shirley when she presented the paper which got published in the Journal of Asthma. Later came our supervised controlled trial, more specifically randomized by one of our PhD students, where she showed reduction in IgE values, reduction in sensitivity to skin prick test, and all other parameters. The major benefit, which as Dr. Kavita has told, is the reduction in the medication. I would like to share some of my individual experiences. I had one of my patients, one of my yoga therapists, who came and said, Madam, I got a little wheeze, so should I take an inhaler or not? I said, why did you develop this? Have you forgotten that I was a steroid dependent, oral steroid dependent asthma patient 5 years back when I entered yoga therapy, and all these years I had forgotten. Now I got a little wheeze, that's why I wanted to check whether I should really go for a small inhaler or can I manage with only yoga. So many of our yoga teachers who were involved in these studies have completely got rid of this program. I would like to share some experience with ILD. I had one lady who came with oxygen dependence. She was coming, she had an oxygen concentrator, 24/7 oxygen, and she was almost totally disabled. And 2 years later, one lady walked into my clinic and said, Madam, you will not recognize me. I was the same person who was running around with oxygen concentrator behind me, bedridden. Look at me now. I am a strong woman walking around doing everything like before. ILD, no steroids. These are fascinating examples that we see with respiratory problems. COPD patients, of course, is the thing. Another very interesting study was our publication on add-on yoga therapy in tuberculosis. This was another paper which took almost 5 years for us to publish, to be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So we went into a sanatorium where we selected matched cases, one group doing yoga, one group doing non-yoga, and we were able to show that the sputum negativity was achieved 1/3 the time before. If sputum negativity was achieved in 3 weeks in the control group, we found that yoga groups achieved sputum negativity within 1 week, and of course X-ray changes etc. were all significantly better in the yoga group. Regarding the exactly similar to what Deepak said just now, we had this exercise-induced asthma. This was a lesson which I learned from my therapist. I should be thankful to the therapist who taught me this. Once we were conducting an asthma camp, and one of the participants developed a big attack, and I was almost ready to give a Deriphyllin injection those days. We were keeping it ready in the campsite, and my therapist said, Madam, please wait. He is very anxious. Let me relax him a little bit. And if give me 10 minutes, if he doesn't get well, you can prick him. Then I joined with him and started giving him relaxation suggestion, and the attack was gone. I didn't need an episode, and we even had the PFR machine with us. PFR, which was less than 60, became 200 within 10 minutes. I was surprised. This was my first lesson on acute episodes of asthma being treatable through relaxation suggestions. And later we published this with a randomized control program from Fort Collins in USA, where we did the exercise-induced attack and worked on that. So these are all some fascinating examples of how easy it is to work with respiratory problems, because this is a voluntary area, voluntary part of the nervous system, voluntary part of the whole system, as being repeatedly pointed out by Deepak ji, that this is the only system which you can use to bring about 100% mastery over all physiological functions. And respiratory system, therefore, probably from all our experience with other diseases, respiratory problems are probably the easiest.
Thank you so much, Didi. And it's always enjoyable to listen to your anecdotes from the cases that you see. I think it had been a wonderful session talking to all three of you. I have one last question to all three panelists, with which I think we should be ending the session today. There are a lot of youngsters watching this session who are wishing to be future yoga scientists. What are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? What are the areas that they should be looking for? Since all of you are, the privileged yoga researchers, we would like to listen from all three of you the guidance for the younger researchers. Professor Deepak, I'll start with you.
Welcome to Dr. Raghavendra, who has joined us, the director of CCRYN.
Namaste, sir.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar, sir.
You are muted.
Namaskar.
Raghavendra, you are muted.
So, Dr. Raghavendra, welcome. So, question posed to us by Appa Sauji is that what message we give to youngsters. So, my message to youngsters is the first thing, if they want to be a researcher, they should be practicing yoga themselves. At least some point of, and then they feel it and then they do it and then they observe the changes in themselves, because yoga induces large number of positive changes, and until you are sensitive enough to detect them, feel them, they can start from the cognition itself to the muscle function, to the bone function, to kidney functions, and there's so many other things which came. So that is the first thing they should do it, and then they should focus on some, depending on what direction they want. They want to become a pure basic researchers and fundamental mechanism. There is a lot can be done, and so a lot of fundamental mechanism. You can use the tools for evidence generation, and now the good part of the thing which is happening around the yoga research, which was not there 30 years ago, is that the principle of reductionism is coming into yoga now. people are looking into the, okay, let's examine this component of yoga, or this part of breathing, or this part of naturopathy. Does it work and how does it work? It was not there 30 years ago when I approached some of the funding agencies, CRYN and other places, when I proposed that I want to work only one particular thing. I said, you can't dissect it, yoga as a whole, you have to give the whole yoga protocol, only then yoga protocol will be approved. I said, okay, fine, that I'll do, but do give me permission to have 2 yoga modules in which I just take out one. They gave the permission. So thanks to CCRYN, after long argument, one of the trials on irritable bowel syndrome, I wanted to see how does one only breathing, precisely, I didn't go into detail, right nostril breathing or left nostril breathing, that precise, does it help better in irritable bowel syndrome parameters. So then we had to have 2 protocols instead of one, and in we took out one and other. And also I said, okay, I want to see only the effect of those asanas which manipulate my abdomen in IBS. So my hypothesis, what is it, the manipulation of abdomen which is causing positive effect, or is it a right or left nostril breathing causing the effect? So it took a lot of time for us to, but thankful to the youngsters, now yoga research like through Satyam, through CCRYN and Ayush, the 3 things are available now. Earlier only there was one CCRYN, there was no Ayush at that point of time, no Satyam, and there you can think of doing this kind of research. So this is fundamental. Second point, you want to do kind of an instrumentation development around yoga. You can think now we can think of assistive technology, and we can think of in terms of prescription of yoga or measurement of yoga effect. Now various projects like right and left nostril breathing, you measure the temperature and try to find out. There's so many people have proposed, but nothing has come out to the level of use by a scientist. Similarly, smart yoga mat was talked about on the day 1 here, or I am somewhere, and which means that should be available to the market for the researcher as a scientific tool. It's there, but then how do we know? For example, I'm sitting, is my back okay? Is my back following the yoga prescription, like it should be straight? How do I know? Because so these young researchers can go, and they may be from IIT, they may be from engineering or medical, they put together and develop tools and devices for assisting yoga research, both in prescription as well as quantification. And a lot of things can be done through this. And finally, if they want to become a therapist, they should become a good therapist with a balanced nature, in not underdoing or overdoing. And that's how you think, you convince yourself this is what, and then that will create a demand in the market, that once you start doing good thing, demand comes. And then, for example, supplementation of yoga for bronchial asthma. So some kind of a guidelines, some already there, some kind of prescription protocol, how fits, what percentage it should fit to the allopathy, what percentage, like 20-30% prescription, 40, all these guidelines need to be created. Somebody has to come forward and do. So these are some of the thoughts and future openings where they can fit into. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Professor Kavita ji, we would like to hear from you.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, for the youngsters who are attending this program, I would like to give one take-home message, because the youngsters nowadays feeling the problem of stress, anxiety, some of them have relation problems. So all these problems are there. So I would just like to convey to all of them that the solution is all in yoga for all these problems, because the yoga can provide you benefits at all the levels, at material level, at physical level, at emotional, at intellectual and spiritual. So because at material level, I'll say, because it is so much being promoted by Government of India, by Ayush Ministry, so you will get some or other option to earn money. So material level, no problem. The yoga has a great scope. And if you do it physically, you will be a great beneficiary, because you will be full of energy the whole day. You will be just flying through the day, and nothing will seem impossible to you. At emotional level, you will be more stronger. You will have knowledge how to tackle the relations, and you will be relaxed and peaceful. At intellectual level, you will be more wise, and you will be clarity of vision, clarity of problem, clarity of solution. And if you reach at the ultimate level, that is a spiritual, nothing like that. That is just the full of blissfulness, ananda. So yoga is a thing which is the solution at all the levels for everybody. So to the youngsters, I'll call that come and join yoga and just enjoy it. So that's all I would like to say.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm just reminded of the last farewell function that we had. And Dr. Nagaratna's message to the youngsters who were graduating was the same. Practice yoga. Didi,
Yes.
over to you.
Yeah, what I was having worked in this field for so many years, what I have started understanding is what we have done is 0.1% of the knowledge that is there in the scriptures. We have used maybe some 500 shlokas from various texts to develop these concepts, do research upon, and then work on this. There is a fund of knowledge, and I request the researchers, young researchers, to first learn Sanskrit language and go into deeper and deeper understanding of all the knowledge base that is there. So whoever has to go into yoga should become very adept in Sanskrit language. There is so much of knowledge base that we have to undo, and I'm very happy that CCRYN and there is a traditional research unit also who are going into literary research. Number two, there was a very interesting humor that I heard from one of the scriptural statements. What is the type of research that Kali Yuga does? They say that they'll be counting the leaves on the trees and number of branches on a tree. This is what Kali Yuga is doing now. We are doing a lot of prevalence studies, which is exactly what they said. Can we make the world come into a happiness, harmony, which is the message of International Day of Yoga, by spreading this to a large number of people, by making their lifestyle change. For this, our young researchers should take up socially relevant topics, de-addiction programs, lifestyle change programs for the entire groups and large numbers, so that it is not only understanding the physiology or the pathology or the imbalances, which is very, very relevant, and mechanical mechanism studies, but it should be able to change the world, change the mindset of humanity at large, bring them to a healthy lifestyle. So any research that any youngster takes up, let it include this larger population and how much I've been able to change the world psychology, change the mindset of people, make man more harmony, healthy, happy and harmonious, peaceful, and not get out of this fast, rushing, demanding, challenging, sense-oriented lifestyle. This is the thought process based on which any research should be planned.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Didi. I think this has been simply an amazing session, learning from all three stalwarts here. And we now have Dr. Raghavendra Rao, the director of CCRYN, with us, joining the webinar. Sir, your concluding remarks for today's session.
Thank you, Dr. Apar. So I'm very thankful to Dr. Nagaratna Didi and Dr. K.K. Deepak and Dr. Kavita Gulati Madam. It has been a very insightful talk. I've been hearing your talk, though I couldn't join in person, and all aspects of yoga for improving the respiratory health was covered here. In fact, the last one bit where you talked really gives a message for young researchers like us. And I think it is really heartening to see your encouragement and your mentorship to all our young researchers. And that's the reason why we put our young moderators and researchers as the moderators for each of these functions. This is because they also get to interact with you closely. They also learn to understand the importance of you using yoga in research, and also get a lot of insight and knowledge into your thought processes. And this is very, very important to develop future young researchers in the field of yoga. I'm sure with your mentoring and under your care and hands, we'll be able to accomplish that goal. One more thing is like CCR1 is also involved in a lot of research activities. And if anybody has any small idea, sir, like past of CCR1 is different, and now we are going to be a different CCR1. So I would just like to tell that anybody has any good idea and wants to do something, do not hesitate to contact us. We'll be happy to do something to the intramural research of CCR1, and any sort of research project you want to take up in your domain, in your field, in your area of expertise. We are happy to help you, sir. So with this, I thank one and all for being here for this IDY series of webinars. And these are insightful webinars to help in spreading the message of yoga. And we are getting some good things coming out of these webinars. And this is going to be made into a compendium report at the end of all the IDY activities from CCR1. And thank you all once again for your support and cooperation. And thank you once again. Namaste. And wish you all a very happy IDY.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
We are also very thankful for giving this opportunity to discuss, to give this platform to discuss our research and our outputs. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, madam. Thank you.
Om Shanti Shanti.